Happened in 1924. Simchas Torah Tofresh Pehei. The famous words of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, mach do Eretz Yisroel, make your place into Israel. There was a Chassid, his name was Rabbi Avram of the village of Batsum. He was known as Avram Batsumer. I believe his last name was Katzenellenbogen. And this Rabbi Avram was very tall, very handsome, and very Chassidish. Tremendous Chassidic Jew. And he was totally devoted to God and to the Torah and to prayer. And his children, due to the economic hardships, had turned away from their tradition, became communists. And the Rabbi Avram hated his life, couldn't stand the fact that his grandchildren were being raised as atheists. He was all alone, his wife had passed on, and he wanted permission to go to the Holy Land. He had a visa, and he wanted the Rebbe's permission for him to leave his city, his hometown of Gomel in Belarus, and go to Israel. And so he came to the Rebbe on Simchas Torah in Tofresh Pehei in 1924. And he said, Rebbe, I have no enjoyment in life. My children have become communists. I see no Yiddishkeit in front of me. I have a visa to go to Eretz Yisroel. Let me go to Eretz Yisroel and live out my last years in holiness. And the Rebbe looked at him with a sharp eye and he says, mach Eretz Yisroel, make Gomel into Israel, into the Holy Land. You'll ask how? You'll find out in that room. And the Rebbe pointed across the hall to his private room where he would receive audiences. And after the holiday, after Simchas Torah, Rabbi Avram Katzenellenbogen and Rabbi Avram Batsumer entered in private discussion with the Rebbe, and the Rebbe says, I want you to fast for 3 days and 3 nights. It's called fasting b'havsoke, half of the week. And at the end of your 3-day fast, toward Mincha Ma'ariv, you should go to one of the shuls and daven there. And in between Mincha and Ma'ariv, I want you to give a patch on the table, and whatever comes to your mind, you should say. And you should know your words will have power in heaven. People, not only will people listen, but God will listen to your words. But they're going to chase you away. But you should know there'll be people who will listen to you, take heed, and after services, they'll chase you away. But after services, behind the shul, you'll meet with them by 4 or 5, and from them you'll start. Rabbi Avram did so. At the end of a 3-day fast, he gave a patch on the table in a shul, whichever shul they were all. Once had been 100 shuls in Gomel. There were only 5 left, only for the AKs, for the old men. And if you were a young person, spies would see you, and you were fearful for your life. But there were still some young men in this particular synagogue. And he said, the public schools are treif. They teach their children, our children, to not believe in God. And a person should burn himself than to send his children to such institutions. We have to do something about it. When people heard this was against the government policy, so they chased them away. But behind the shul, 4 or 5 people came up and said, Rabbi Avram, what do we do? And they discussed how they would make a secret cheder, and Rabbi Avram would collect the monies for the cheder. What did Rabbi Avram do? He put pushkas in every Jewish home to support the cheder, to support Yiddish learning. And even the communists had pushkas for the cheder because the communists' wives believed that Rabbi Avrom could give a blessing for their children. Whenever they had a sickness a doctor couldn't help, they came to Rabbi Avrom. He gave a blessing and the child was healthy. And this story we know through the storied Chassid Rabbi Nachum Mendel Futterfass. Rabbi Mendel Futterfass told me the story while I was driving in a car with him, and a few years later, Tafresh Peiches, he was sent by the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe to collect funds for the yeshiva Temchit Mimim, for the central yeshiva, and he told him to go to Rabbi Avrom in Gomel and he'll help him collect money. And they went around and collected money for 2 straight weeks, from morning till night. They didn't stop. And Rabbi Avrom Batsumer would not eat till 7 p.m. every day. That was his first and only meal. He had some bread and tea. That was his meal. And after he finished eating his meal, he had worked the whole day. He sat down to learn 2 hours of Torah. And then at 9 o'clock, he would start his Seder, his order of Krishma Shalamite. And he would cry and cry and cry and cry and cry for all of his whatever imagined sins. And after 2 weeks, Rav Mendel couldn't stand it anymore. Rabbi Avrom, was weint hier? Why are you crying? You do mitzvahs a whole day with self-sacrifice. You don't eat, you don't sleep. Your whole life is devoted to the education of others. Why are you crying so much? So Rabbi Avrom answered him, yeah, you're right. Metut, aber es stinkt fort. It still stinks from me. So Mendel Futterfass explained to me. He had yeshus, he had a feeling of ego, and he hated the ego. And so he would cry that he had this ego for doing all of these mitzvahs. My friends, it's good to have that ego. Let's all learn from Rabbi Avroham, and we should make our environment, whether it's West Bloomfield or Farmington Hills or Bloomfield Hills or Park Avenue or Stamford, Connecticut or London, England, wherever we are, we should make wherever we are into Eretz Yisroel, transforming this world in a world of goodness and a world of light.